Hello everyone, welcome back to Chinmoy's Biology channel again. So today we are here with the second part of breathing and respiration. So the basics we have completed in the previous episode. Hope you have gone through that. If you have not gone through that, I'll be putting the link here in the description box. So let's get started with today's topic, and it is going to be a very interesting topic, and we are going to discuss in details about the mechanism of breathing, and we will also deal with all the types of respiratory volumes. Okay, so please don't skip it in between, and please go through the video in full so you will get many important things to know. So let's get started. So here comes the mechanism of breathing. Okay, so we know that it involves two stages: the inspiration, during which the atmospheric air is drawn in, and the expiration, by which the alveolar air is released out. So the movement of the air into and outside the lungs is carried out by creating a pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. So what is the pressure gradient? That is a difference in pressure between the lungs and the atmosphere should be there. So when the outside pressure is less than the inside pressure, then only the air will move out of the lungs, and when the inside pressure is less than the outside pressure, then only from atmosphere the air will gush inside the lungs. So this is the pressure gradient. Okay, so this constant pressure gradient is maintained or created in between the lungs and the atmosphere. Is it clear now? Now, inspiration, it is what? Inspiration can occur if the pressure within the lungs or the intrapulmonary pressure is less than the atmospheric pressure, and there is a negative pressure in the lungs with respect to the atmospheric pressure, right? So that is what is happening here, and similarly the expiration takes place when the intrapulmonary pressure is higher than the atmospheric pressure. That is, the pressure inside the lungs is higher than the pressure outside the atmosphere, in the outside atmosphere. Okay, so the diaphragm and the specialized set of muscles, the external and the internal intercostals between the ribs, okay, they help in the generation of this pressure gradients. Okay, so the internal and the external intercostal muscles between the ribs. So let us see the diagram here. So these are the ribs and the sternum. So here only lies the intercostal muscles in between the ribs. So these muscles in between the ribs, that is the intercostal muscles, helps to maintain this pressure gradient. Okay, now inspiration is initiated by the contraction of the diaphragm, and which increases the volume of the thoracic chamber. So what is a thoracic chamber? This full is the thoracic chamber, and the volume of the thoracic chamber is increased in the anterior-posterior axis. Okay, and the contraction of the external intercostal muscle lifts up the ribs and the sternum, causing an increase in the volume of the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis. Okay, so this is what is happening here. Okay, so let us move into this details of how this volume is increased in the thoracic chamber in the dorsoventral axis, and what is this anterior posterior axis. So let us discuss this first. So what is anterior posterior axis? So anterior posterior axis is an imaginary line which runs from the front to the back of an organism. So front part is the anterior part and back part is the posterior part. Okay, so anterior posterior axis runs from the front to the back, and it is also known as the longitudinal axis. Okay, now the dorsoventral axis is an imaginary line that runs from the top to the bottom of an organism, and it is also known as the vertical axis. Okay, is it clear? Now we will see the diagram of what is these two. So it's a very beautiful diagram indeed. You can see this is the ventral part or the anterior part, and this is the dorsal or the posterior part. Okay, so anterior means toward front, posterior means towards back, and dorsal means towards spine, and ventral means towards the belly. Okay, Now superior means towards the top and inferior means towards the bottom. Now if you are taking this in case of an animal, how it is? It is like dorsal is this part towards the spine and ventral is towards the belly, whereas anterior is towards this front part and posterior is here towards the back part. Now here again superior is here and inferior is the lower part. Okay, so this is how we can divide the anterior posterior, the dorso ventral. So this diagram is making it very much clear. It's a very good diagram, so just go through it and understand that is what is dorsal, what is ventral, what is anterior and what is posterior part. So is it clear? Now we will move back to the mechanism of breathing. So we have just now told that the contraction of the exterior intercostal muscles lifts up the ribs and the sternum, causing an increase in the volume of the dorsoventral axis. So dorsoventral axis is being increasing the volume of the thoracic chamber. So dorsoventral axis, we have just now spoken. The dorsal means the part which is towards the spine and ventral means the part which is towards the belly. So this axis from the spine to the belly is the dorsoventral axis, and that has increased the overall lung space. So the overall increase in the thoracic volume causes a similar increase in the pulmonary volume. So pulmonary volume means the amount of air present in the lungs. Okay, so an increase in the pulmonary volume decreases the intrapulmonary pressure to less than atmospheric pressure, which forces the air from outside to move into the lungs. Okay, so as it has inflated and it is not having so much pressure inside, so the air from outside will gush into the lungs to fill in the void space. Okay, so this part is called inspiration, and during this process the diaphragm gets contracted, and this we will say that this is the entering of the air from the lung outside to the lungs, that is inspiration. Okay, so next what is happening now in the when the diaphragm is relaxed and the intercostal muscles returns the diaphragm and the sternum to their normal position and reduce the thoracic volume. See what is happening? The diaphragm is getting relaxed and arching upwards. So when they are getting relaxed and when they are arching upwards, what they are having, the sternum and the ribs, they are moving back to their original position. So first they were inflated, now they are moving back to normal position. So the volume of the thorax is decreased. So when the thorax is decreased, automatically the interpulmonary pressure is slightly above the atmospheric pressure. So what will be happening there? So when it is above the atmospheric pressure, then it is causing the expulsion of air from the lungs to the atmosphere. Okay, so we have the ability to increase the strength of inspiration and the expiration with the help of additional muscles in the abdomen. So this inspiration and expiration is also with the help of the abdominal muscles. Okay, these are the additional muscles which are helping in the process. So on an average, a healthy human breathes 12 to 16 times per minute, and the volume of air involved in breathing movements can be estimated by using a spirometer. So what is the instrument used to measure the inspiration and expiration? That is called the spirometer, which helps in the clinical assessment of the pulmonary functions. So is it clear to all of you? So now this is the process what is happening. In the first part, the intrapulmonary pressure is reduced, so the air is out from the outside enters. In the second part, the diaphragm is relaxed and the ribs and the sternum are moving to original position, and so the intrathoracic pressure increases and the air is expelled out. So this is what is the mechanism of inspiration and expiration. So is it clear to all of you? Now we will move on to these respiratory volumes and capacities, and these are very important for all your exams. Okay, so just learn them thoroughly, and I'll be showing you with different graphs, graphical representation. So make it clear and please go through it properly. So let us move on to the next part. Now here comes the respiratory volumes. Now first come the volume of air inspired or expired during a normal respiration. So just now we have spoken about what is the inspiration and expiration. They combine together the normal inspired air and expired air during normal respiration. It is about 500 ml approximately. So this is the tidal volume. A healthy man can inspire and expire approximately 6,000 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. Okay, so this is called the tidal volume. So the healthy man can inspire as well as expire approximately 6,000 to 8,000 ml of air per minute. Now, what is the inspiratory reserve volume or IRV? This is the additional amount of air, additional volume of air a person can inspire by a forcible inspiration. So, the amount of inspiration after it is done, then after that, if you are forcibly inspiring the air forcefully, this averages to about 2,500 to 3,000 ml. Okay, so this is the forcible the amount of air which is taken in. This is the inspiratory reserve volume. Next to which the first one is the tidal volume. This is the amount is 6,000 to 8,000. This is the amount of inspired and expired air. Second one is the inspiratory reserve volume or IRV, where the person can inspire by a forceful inspiration. The third one is the expiratory reserve volume or ERV, where additional volume of air a person can expire by forcible expiration. So after the lungs is expiration is fully done, forcefully if you are trying to pump out some air from the lungs, that is averages to about 1,000 to 1,100 ml. So this is the expiratory reserve volume. Next comes the residual volume. So residual volume is what? Volume of air remaining in the lungs even after the forcible expiration. So the lungs is never empty, right? It is having some amount of residual volume of air present in it. So after the forcible expiration, also some amount of air what is present is the residual volume, and this averages to about 1,100 ml to 1,200 ml. Okay, so by adding up a few respiratory volumes described above, one can derive various pulmonary capacities which can be used in the clinical diagnosis. Okay, so there are few respiratory volumes. With this respiratory volumes or pulmonary capacities, we can diagnose certain lungs or pulmonary tests or clinical diagnosis. Okay, so now we will move on to this inspiratory capacity. Now we are back with this inspiratory capacity. So what is inspiratory capacity? Inspiratory capacity is the total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expiration. So after a normal expiration is done, then again you are inspiring amount of air. So that is the inspiratory capacity. So that is including the inspiratory reserve volume plus the tidal volume. Okay, so then what is expiratory capacity? Total volume of air a person can expire after a normal inspiration. That is, we can say that the person has already expired some air and after normal inspiration. So this includes the tidal volume plus the expiratory reserve volume, right? So total volume of air a person can expire after a normal inspiration. That is the expiratory capacity, the same as that of inspiratory capacity. Okay, so this as it is tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume. This is tidal volume plus expiratory reserve volume. Now comes the functional residual capacity. So what is functional residual capacity? It is the volume of air that will remain in the lungs after a normal expiration. So you have expired normally, a normal expiration. After that, what is remaining in the lungs? That is the expiratory reserve volume plus the reserve volume. So that is called the functional residual capacity. That is the expiratory reserve volume plus the reserve volume is the functional residual capacity. So functional residual capacity, what is that? Functional residual capacity is equal to the expiratory reserve volume plus the reserve volume itself. So this is the functional residual capacity.
Okay, so now what is the vital capacity? Vital capacity is the maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forced expiration. So you are breathing in maximally after forced expiration. So this includes the ERV, TV and IRV, that is expiratory reserve volume, tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume, or the maximum volume of air a person can breathe out after a forced inspiration. So after a forced the volume of air a person can breathe in after a forced expiration, that is the vital capacity. Or the maximum volume of a person can breathe out after a forced inspiration, that is including the expiratory reserve volume, tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume. So that is the vital capacity. Okay. Now comes the last one, that is the total lung capacity. What is that? The total volume of the air accommodated in the lungs at the end of forced inspiration. So you have inspired forcefully. After forceful inspiration, there is a certain amount or volume of air which is present in your lungs. So that includes the reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, tidal volume and inspiratory reserve volume. So this is all the vital capacity plus the residual volume. All this combined, all the volumes which are respiratory volumes and capacities which we have discussed today are very important. Now in the next slide, I'll be teaching you the graph, which is very important. So let us move on to the graph.
Now here comes the graph where we will be discussing about all the volumes which we have spoken about in a form of definitions. But here we will discuss this lung volumes in this graph. Okay. So let us see that. Tidal volume is the volume of air inspired or expired during a normal respiration. So it is about 500 ml. So the amount of air inspired and expired during normal expiration and inspiration is this one. This is 500 ml and this is the tidal volume. Okay. So the in between the inspired and expired, during that the amount is 500 ml. Okay, so total amount of inspiration and expiration is, in a healthy individual we have spoken, that is 6000 to 8000 ml, but this is the tidal volume during that. Now what is the inspiratory reserve volume? See here, inspiratory reserve volume, what is that? The additional volume a person is inspiring after normal respiration. So that is a forcible form of respiration. This is the inspiratory reserve volume. Okay, that is approximately 3000 ml. So please do learn this, all the values with the definitions, because in your exams you will be getting the value. So what is the volume of the inspiratory reserve volume? So you should write the amount. Okay, 3000 ml. If you are writing the inspiratory reserve volume is 6000 ml, no, it's wrong. So you should write that it is 3000 ml. Correct. Now we will move on to the expiratory reserve volume. So what is that expiratory reserve volume? So that is the amount of air after expiration, the forcible expiration. So this averages to about 1000 ml. So okay, so this is the expiratory, or it is almost 1000 ml. It is the expiratory reserve volume, averages to 1000 to 1100 ml. Now comes the residual volume. So again, residual volume is what? After full forcible expiration, the amount of air that is present in the lungs, it is the forcible expiration, that is about almost 1000 to 1100 to 1200 ml. That is the expiratory reserve volume. So by adding a few respiratory volumes described above, one can just derive certain pulmonary capacities and all. Now what is again the inspiratory capacity? Here comes the inspiratory capacity. What is that? That is the total volume of air a person can inspire after normal expiration. So that includes the total inspiratory reserve volume plus the tidal volume. So here what is inspiratory capacity? Inspiratory capacity is actually the inspiratory reserve volume plus the tidal volume. You can see here plus the tidal volume. So this part was the tidal volume. Okay. Now when it comes to the next one, that is the expiratory reserve volume, the expiratory capacity. So what is the expiratory capacity? It is the tidal volume. It is the tidal volume plus the expiratory reserve volume plus this expiratory reserve volume. So that is actually the expiratory capacity. So this one is the expiratory capacity. So that is the tidal volume plus the expiratory reserve volume. So that is the expiratory reserve volume plus the tidal volume is equal to the expiratory capacity. Is it clear? So this is not pointed here, but this is the expiratory capacity is equal to tidal volume plus expiratory reserve volume. Next comes the functional residual capacity. So functional residual capacity is the volume of the air that will remain in the lungs after normal expiration. So expiration part is over. After expiration also some amount or volume of air is present in the lungs, that is the functional residual capacity. Okay. Now comes the vital capacity, the maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after forced expiration is the vital capacity. Okay. So after forced expiration, a person can breathe in about this amount of air. So this is the vital capacity. After forceful inspiration, again actually what is this including? This is including the tidal volume. This is including the inspiratory reserve volume. This is including the expiratory reserve volume. So total this three together are called the vital capacity. So vital capacity is equal to the inspiratory reserve volume, the tidal volume and the expiratory reserve volume. So these three together are combined to form the vital capacity. Next comes the total lung capacity. Okay. So what is it? Total volume of air that is accommodated in the lungs after forced inspiration. So totally you are filling your lungs to your utmost what we can say, to your utmost inspiration, how much you can ever fill. So that is the total lung capacity or TLC. So this is the totally you are filling your lungs. So this is the total lung capacity. So this is all for today's episode because it is a very important episode. These all are coming in your exams every now and then. So today we have dealt with the mechanism of breathing with diagram showing inspiration and expiration. Apart from that, we have done about the respiratory volumes, all the types of volumes with this graphical representation I have taught you. If you are having any doubts, any queries, please do write in my comment box and stay tuned, stay updated and subscribe to my channel because the next lesson will be on exchange of gases. It will be very important one. If you don't want to miss the continuity of the lesson and want to learn many more interesting topics, so please do subscribe and share it with your friends. So next topic will be transport of gases, transport of oxygen, transport of carbon dioxide and what. That is all we will be studying under the exchange of gases. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for watching.